Wonderful. So you're investing today in learning about disruption, innovation, things that are going to really change the world. But it really doesn't matter unless you put it into practice. So you want to be the disruptors. You want to be the innovators. And as senior leaders and executives, you are the foundation for your company's business agility. But time and time again, in the 14 years, and for me, 8 years, working with companies around the world on their agile transformation journeys, we've discovered a common theme. That you equate agility to software delivery teams. Maybe you add some DevOps practices, so you invest money, and significant amounts of money, into training and coaching, some process and tools. Maybe you let them reconfigure to be more agile. But I'm here to tell you that that is not going to get you to business agility. In business agility, you really want to be able to create, sense, and respond to the changes confidently and as a matter of everyday business. And what that means is that agile and agility really transcends software delivery teams. You must take agile and lean practices up and across the organization to get the true business value. Because otherwise, you're going to have teams delivering, but you're not getting those business outcomes that you really seek. So instead of just investing the money and the resources, because that's actually pretty easy. We heard it just a little bit before. What this requires is courage. As executives and senior leaders, as individuals, what you have to be willing to do is abandon the past. Let go of what made you successful before. Let go of those relationships, the way that you worked, the things that you measured. Let go of that so that you can actually embrace a new and different future. I'm going to introduce to you 3 principles that we have found, along with 3 areas of practice that really allow you to take what you've learned and move agility up and out across the organization. And while you may sit in your chair and go, oh, not going to work here. You don't understand my organization. It's complex. I'm going to ask you to do exactly that. Let go of your old thoughts and your grounding so that you can actually shift and have different outcomes. So the 3 principles are around transparency, a bias toward learning, and flow efficiency. And we found these areas to truly epitomize agility within an organization. And these have to be covered not only at the software delivery team level, but at the portfolio and at the business level. So as we walk through these, think about these and your practices at all the different levels of the organization. And each principal area builds off the other. You cannot have a bias toward learning where you're actually improving things without transparency. And you absolutely can't move towards flow efficiency or ultimate value delivery, think of concept to cash getting all the way out the door, without that bias toward learning. And the 3 areas of practice that epitomize those 3 principal areas are around cadence and synchronization at all levels of the organization, the bias towards learning, and flow efficiency. So together, these are really going to allow you, as I said before, take agility up and out across the organization, beyond the software delivery teams to the portfolio as well as the business level. And these aren't the only 3 principles and practice areas, but again, in all the years that we've been working with companies, these come up time and time again. Click. And that first principle area, transparency, can be the absolute most challenging area. I think Chan earlier from Zuara, he had talked about the silos within an organization. We encounter organization or after organization where you have divisional silos, departmental silos, even silos within the same functional area. People not willing to share what's going on, the status, They're very protective of their budgets and my resources. We actually have to start to make this transparent. Oops, and now my slides are going crazy. We actually have to start to have some transparency up and down across the organization. And it starts with a simple practice or act of defining what a cadence and synchronization is. So if you think about your company, how frequently and with whom do you actually share information and sync up? Even within your own team. We worked with one marketing organization where the team members were so busy, they had so much work going on, they didn't even know what each other was working on. So they started with a simple act of having a stand-up where they talked about what they had accomplished, what they were working on, and where they were blocked. Just beginning to share the information with one another so you have that transparency of what are our priorities right now? Where are we focused? And we apply transparency to our work in progress. How many of you ever feel like there's too much going on, there's too much to do? That, oh great, here's yet another strategic initiative, and by the way, keep doing everything else that we asked you to do, and do it more efficiently and effectively without additional people. When you start to visualize the work in progress, it begins to have a conversation within a current team and across the organization. At a company steering meeting where we were taking on our new initiatives for the coming quarter, we stopped and said, what is all the work that we currently have in progress? Literally visualizing on Post-it notes across every department, marketing, finance, sales, accounting, operations, support, the delivery teams. What all were we already working on that we hadn't even finished, and then we're going to take on more work? So visualizing that work is a very powerful way to start to help people understand what's going on. But it can be very scary, right? Letting people see what you're working on requires a lot of vulnerability. And making sure you understand this at all levels of the organization, not just the delivery teams, but across the business. We did a simple exercise at one place where we just did a pass the ball. So you could experience work in progress and what happens. So when you just have a few balls being tossed around, easy to catch it. You add more balls into the system, and suddenly balls start to drop. You don't know where you're supposed to look, who you're supposed to talk with, who you're supposed to coordinate with, and you don't know if you drop the most important ball on the floor and spend all this time and energy catching the ones that really didn't matter. And with transparency, we're going to start to invite collaboration. Just start the conversations, even amongst your team members. If you can expand to other parts of the organization or other team members, that's great. But just start the conversations where one person isn't just telling the status or what's going on, but you're listening to each other. You're hearing the other voices because others can see things that you can't see. Others can actually help remove blocks or where we're stuck or help us focus on the right priorities. So as we start with that foundation of transparency, again, it takes great courage for you to demand that kind of transparency, not of yourself as well as your team members. We get the system going, and we start to want to have a focus on the next principle, which is a bias toward learning. Because if we don't then inspect and adapt and get better, we're just going to stay stuck. As we inspect and adapt what's happening, we're going to improve our cadence and synchronization. So now that we've started with defining something very simply at a team level, we can think about what's the bigger value stream. So who else do we need to work with to actually get the business benefit, the customer outcome that we want out the door? Because if you keep it isolated to a team, they may have done great stuff, but it may not matter. Or it may be dependent on somebody else that's working on it. So we start to think about how do we sync up and have a cadence with other parts of the organization for the bigger ultimate outcome or the solution that we're trying to deliver. And once we visualize that work in progress, we can start to manage our work in progress. Literally starting to see the buckets or bins of work that we have and where it's overflowing. We're not necessarily saying we're going to stop doing stuff, but we can start to see, do we need to maybe shift our focus? And because we started to now sync up on a larger value stream across different groups and departments, we can see the upstream and downstream effects. Because those dependencies on other teams and parts of the organization have us with work that's unfinished. And if the work is unfinished and doesn't get out to our customer, it doesn't matter. It's just waste. There's a great book by Donald Reinerson, Principle of Product Development Flow. Well, it's about product development, 175 principles. It's very applicable to the business. And he says in it, if there's one thing you manage your queues. If there's one thing you measure the cost of delay. And now we're going to expand our collaboration where we're going to bring people of all different specializations and skills and experiences together to align towards a common goal. So instead of departments having their own goal, you're going to actually have the entire teams and across the organization align towards a common goal, working together, coming together, regardless of your specialization, to deliver on an actual business outcome. And as you expand the collaboration, you still have smaller conversations so we can hear each other's voices. So it's a safer environment to really communicate what's happening within the organization. And as you expand the collaboration, it is imperative to have executive sponsorship to truly allow us to improve our collaboration. We do things like empathy interviews for all the different departments who are participating in company steering to ask them, well, what worked really well? What didn't work so well? And we identify problem statements that we then use with that executive sponsor to remove our barriers and blocks to collaboration and communication. So now that we've started to inspect and adapt the system, we can actually move towards flow efficiency. And this is really what it's all about, getting the value out the door. There's a difference between resource efficiency and flow efficiency. How many of your organizations are all about, we need to make sure our resources are 100% utilized? How many of you yourselves or you have people on your team go, I have so much work to do, I'm working 120%. But if it's not on the real value, it doesn't matter. So being busy is very different than delivering value. So as leaders, as individuals, do you have the courage to say no to what's not important and actually focus on the items that are going to flow value through the system? So we now expand our collaboration beyond just the teams, beyond just the value stream, to the organization. We're all familiar with the planning cycles and cadence for big, executives going to go off and define our new strategic vision. We've got our planning and budgeting cycle. Teams are off doing their work. But thinking back to those silos, much of this is actually separated from one another. There is no alignment up and down the organization. And so we shift. So with our cadence and synchronization, we now look our annual planning cycle, for example, but it is informed by the departmental planning session, which is informed by what all the teams are doing. And again, this is not just the delivery teams. This is delivery, marketing, sales, operations, finance, understanding everything that's happening so that we can then agree and know with confidence. At key points and defined points, we're going to come together, share what we know, and determine if we need to steer the organization. Rethink our strategies, redefine or reprioritize our initiatives, or if we're actually still on track for what we're doing. And by doing so, we're going to limit WIP, which takes tremendous courage. What are we going to stop doing so that we can flow things through the system rather than having all that unfinished work? From a strategic initiative, again, you can, as an executive, say, I want all these new things. I just came back from the conference. We are now going in this direction, but make sure you still do everything else. You have to be willing to say, not only here's what we're going to do, but here's what we're going to stop doing. And now you're going to steer collaboratively, where you bring the voices across all the nooks and departments in your organization. You bring in your customers to actually steer and help co-create where the company is going. All these different voices coming together, working together in a transparent fashion so that we can co-create rather than being told where we're going. So that we incorporate all the different voices and we can, with confidence, steer our organization and actually get value out the door. So we've covered these different principles and practice areas. And again, you need to remember, we need to assess this at the delivery team level portfolio as well as the business level. In an executive workshop, we had executives self-assess where they were at all these different levels. You can be great at one level, but if you're stuck in any of these others, so for example, managing WIP, then you're actually not aligned. And you'll have a false sense of alignment and where you're going. So I started by telling you, or asking you to have the courage to abandon the past, to let go of what worked for you before, the people, the practices, the metrics, etc. And I want to end with a video from Rosalinda Torres. She's a senior consultant, managing director at a consulting firm, BCG. She spent her entire career in leadership. And in this short clip, she talks about what it takes to be a courageous leader. And based off of that courageous leadership, it helps inform us from business agility what it requires.
Third question, are you courageous enough to abandon a practice that has made you successful in the past? There's an expression, go along to get along. But if you follow this advice, chances are, as a leader, you're going to keep doing what's familiar and comfortable. Great leaders dare to be different. They don't just talk about risk-taking, they actually do it. And one of the leaders shared with me the fact that the most impactful development comes when you are able to build the emotional stamina to withstand people telling you that your new idea is naive or reckless or just plain stupid. Now, interestingly, the people that will join you are not in your usual suspects in your network. They're often people that think differently and therefore are willing to join you in taking a courageous leap. And it's a leap, not a step.
So let go of what's comfortable and familiar. Great leaders dare to be different. They don't just talk about taking risks, they actually take the risks. So what I'm asking you to do is have the courage to let go of the past so that you can embrace a new future. So you can take agility through your organization and actually deliver on all the great ideas that we've heard today. Thank you very much.